Hi, welcome. It's February 5th. So, as Heather said yesterday, things are happening quickly. The plagues have had their effect, and the Israelites are free. They've been told now that they need to always remember what has happened here by celebrating the Passover each year. But we continue now with the events as they unfold very quickly as we move along. First of all, I didn't get very far in today's reading. Basically, two verses. We got to the point where the firstborn must be consecrated. And I began thinking, I'm a firstborn. Maybe we ought to take a look at this a little closer. So basically, God says all firstborns are His. And try to go through and list all of the special privileges that firstborns have, first of all. And here are just some of those things that we look in Scripture and see. First, they held a special place. Many times, people of that day felt like they belonged to whatever deity one worshipped, which is why, even among some of the Israelites, at times, child sacrifices took place. Now, firstborn typically refers to the eldest son. And part of the things that go along with that are the succession of leadership of the family, responsibility for the continuation and well-being of the family, and as they continue, some preferential treatments, a double portion of the inheritance, the family blessing. All of those things go to the firstborn. So now, God having rescued the people, the price was to be the firstborn male child, unless it was redeemed by the sacrifice of the firstborn animal, unblemished animal. Now we're going to find later on in Numbers that there was also the option for people to redeem that firstborn child with 5 shekels of silver, and of course people could do that. Sometimes, however, parents, rather than pay that price, would offer their children in service to the Lord in the temple. And this, of course, was the case with Samuel, which we'll find about later on. So you have now this basically God saying, I have shown mercy on you. What I ask in return is this. You'll notice that what happened to the Egyptians and their firstborn who did not honor me was that all those firstborn were killed. I have made allowances for you, but nonetheless, this is a rule that you are to follow. Now, on a different level, we could also think of it in terms of Israel being chosen by God as the firstborn among all the peoples, all the nations of the world. And then we can move on and we think about that so that as Jesus comes along later on, we see that Jesus claims us as his own. And parents are to raise their children, dedicating them to the Lord. And this is for all of us, not just the firstborn. Since we are God's people, as the Israelites are God's people, we are to yield our lives to Jesus, become as living sacrifices to Him, as Romans 8 tells us. Now, there's a supreme challenge there for all of us, too. We're not up to that task. Thankfully, Jesus has taken care of that. He has redeemed us, much in the way in the Old Testament that they could pay that 5 shekels of silver or sacrifice that firstborn animal. In reality, the sacrifice for us was the death of God's own Son on the cross. So, all of those benefits that I spoke about just a moment ago become ours through Jesus Christ and His sacrifice. So that kind of hit me first as I began to think about the firstborn, the first fruits being offered back to God. That also applies today in our lives. Are we offering God our first and our best in thanksgiving for what He has done for us? Now, the second thing that comes along, and I saw it over and over and wanted to at least touch on it a little bit, and that is this idea of Pharaoh's heart being hardened. And this heart hardening really has 2 sides to it. First, Pharaoh, if we look back in history, was considered to be a god or godlike, not only by himself but by all the people. And so, therefore, he was predisposed to be against Moses and the God. Now, that meant that Pharaoh just wasn't going to agree with that. His heart was against God from the very beginning. The other part of the equation, though, is that God intends to use this to send the message that he is God. And so he allows Pharaoh to wallow and even increase this hardening of his heart as plagues take place, as events take place. And it just makes the whole situation worse. Nonetheless, it accomplishes God's will in this particular instance. The third thing that comes along today, the Israelites must also remember the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and as they left Egypt, bringing everything with them. So what they did was they would celebrate this feast. First they would celebrate the Passover, then there would be this whole 7-day celebration time, and at the end they would celebrate this feast. And so they must do that every year, and that continues even to today. But our reading today doesn't stop there. The whirlwind continues. And now we follow this account of the Israelites being led by Moses and Aaron out of Egypt and into the wilderness. And I just jotted down some thoughts that, and of course, these are my own paraphrases about what went on. First of all, they are free, and we hear them say, "We're free," after 430 years of living in Egypt, much of it as slaves. All told, 600,000 men, not including women, children, livestock, and plunder from the Egyptians, head on out. And the first phrase that came to my mind was, "Moses, you the man." And so they head on out. Now, everything's going well until they get to the Red Sea. They get to the Red Sea, they look back, the Egyptians are in hot pursuit. All of a sudden it's, "Moses, what have you done? Let's go back and live under the Egyptians. Things weren't so bad after all." Then they turn around again. Moses appeals to God. God says, "Take over. Here's what I'm going to do. Wait." The Israelites look across and say, "Hey, that water's parting. Let's go across." And they go across. They look back. The Egyptians are drowning. And all of a sudden, cool. Next thing you know, they're singing to the Lord. And of course, that melody is still playing in my head to that song we used to sing in youth group. So now, here are the Israelites again. "We are free." Take 2. 3 days later, they're wandering in the wilderness. Now they come to the place where we have no water. "What have you done to us, Moses?" And then here's the water, but it tastes bitter. We can't drink that stuff. And of course, God fixes the water and tells them, basically, what you need to do is look to me as the healer of all your troubles. And so this process that now has begun, this back and forth, we're going to find out is going to go on and on and on and again. And so events continue to move pretty quickly as we go through this narrative. Phew. A lot is happening, much more to follow. Through all of this, I'm left with the knowledge that God desires to be first in my life. That was the word I picked up on today. Through the presence of Christ in me, He is, and I can give thanks for that, because I could not do it on my own. Hey, it makes me want to sing. And the old song is, "I will sing unto the Lord, for He has triumphed gloriously." And it goes on, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great day.